when I look back at the creation of Mordheim, I had simply no clue that the game would become a cult classic. Like, it's incredible. I look back now, uh, the online presence, and I love Necromunda, and it's a game that's still reasonably supported. And there was a recent release from GW, and yet the main Facebook groups have fewer people in them than the Mordheim groups today, which is for the game that's so old. There's never been a second edition, and no official support now for well over 10 years. It's just incredible. And I think that has to do something with the creation of the game, because unlike most of the products I've done in my life, and I've done over 50 games in my career, Mordheim really came out of pure creativity and sort of impetus to do something new and unique and cool, rather than trying to fill a product niche. Of course, if you do games for a living like I do, then you have to take the business realities in the account, because if you don't think about your audience you're addressing and the marketplace, then you most likely won't have a job very soon. And yet Mordheim was the exception. It was just, we had a mad idea. It's I had this discussion with the Rick Priestley about, because we were both laughing our asses off at the people panicking over year 2000. Half the world was convinced that the Y2K virus was all the computers were gonna blow up and kill everybody as they grew up. The other half believed that because the Aztec calendar, Mayan calendar ran out of year 2000, which it doesn't, but who cares about the truth? The world was going to end. So we were just watching, but everybody's gone mad. And then we thought, what if it actually happened in the Warhammer world? And then we thought about, but we can't, because if we destroy the world, there isn't much miniature game to play. And then we came up with the idea of the localized apocalypse. So, yep, it's the going through this. So, the other thing that the influenced the beginning of Mordheim was that there have been several successful skirmish systems for 40K. It's and the sci-fi space, and yet we've never done a fantasy skirmish. It's there have been board games, the Hero Quest, the whatnot, the Talisman, but not a skirmish system. And we thought that what would be better than to finally nail it in the Warhammer world. So when we started making Mordheim, one of the main decisions, which I fully stand behind, was that the Mordheim had to mesh with the Warhammer 5th edition rules, because that was the main Warhammer game we were selling at that time. So making a rule set that would be completely different, that actually wouldn't lead the players into playing the big Warhammer game eventually, it would be madness, because it would be counterproductive. So that's why the stat lines, the weapons, the armor rules follow Warhammer 5th edition. If I'd made it purely as a skirmish system, there are a lot of things like maybe armor reduction by strength that I wouldn't have done, because the armor tended to be normal armor tended to be quite worthless in Warhammer at that point. But I tried to contradict the main Warhammer as little as possible. We also had a very large Necromunda player base, and we didn't want them to feel alienated. And the other thing we did, that most of the time in my career, I've been big on bringing tournament and competitive gameplay balance into games. And in Mordheim, it is in many ways, the beginnings of it were much more in the RPG space, where usually when I made a decision on rules on the main rule book, and if I had to pick between this fits the story and the atmosphere of Mordheim versus this would be the best decision for balancing the game. Remember, I was working on the 6th edition Warhammer at the same time, where my main focus was game balance. In Mordheim, I picked what fits the story better. To manage that, I tried to make sure that the power levels of everything in Mordheim were quite muted, and that no matter how powerful combination build you made, a bad luck could kill you. While in the Warhammer at that point, if you made a powerful enough hero, it really didn't matter how many rank and file opponents you faced. You would just every time slaughter all of them. Now, the other thing that we wanted to bring back was the origins of the Warhammer, which was very sort of grimdark, low fantasy. Nowadays, everybody talks about grimdark. They think about 40K, but it actually was Warhammer Fantasy that was the grittier, darker, grimmer of the two games in the beginning. Of course, there's always been in the Warhammer games a aspect of tongue-in-cheek humor and the sort of a irreverence and a very British sense of humor to everything, but it's balanced in a way, like the against the how brutal and nasty and sort of xenophobic and the dirty and the religiously intolerant the Warhammer world is. If you think about it, this is again a tradition in the British sci-fi and fantasy. You look at something like Judge Dredd. I presume that most of you have at least heard about it, about the future judge, where basically there is a fascist government based on sort of a combination of the judge, jury, and the executioner class called the judges. And but it's also riotously funny. Like there's a ton of tongue-in-cheek humor juxtaposed with the sort of very, very serious storytelling. And that was really the original Warhammer feel that we want to go back to. And we also wanted to bring several other the themes into it. I wanted it to be mainly about humans, so that anything non-human would feel like exotic and unusual, sort of heighten the juxtaposition. The magic, we wanted to be rare and dangerous. And there is lots of people have asked me why there are no skeletons in the Undead Warband. And I said, well, a walking skeleton is high fantasy, while zombie is something you can almost believe it exists. And it has much more of that, the horrific aspect. Like everybody, when you mention to old school gamer walking skeletons, they think of the Jason and the Argonauts, which is a great movie, but it talks about mythical heroes. While zombies, you look at something like Walking Dead, it's something you can almost feel the hands reaching for your throat. And this was the first Warhammer game where right from the beginning, because I established the first playtest groups in Games Workshop. This was the first time when the fans were involved in the game development from day one. The first set of the rules, it went out to the group that I established in the Direwolf Warhammer group. They were my sort of trusted men and women who tested the game and gave me feedback. So these were the sort of the philosophical touchstones. And you notice there are a lot of words missing from there. No market studies. The sales department was not involved in any way. Nobody did any sort of a estimate on its financial success. I mean, if somebody wants to make maximum amount of money, you do not put John Blanche as your art director, because it's going to be something that the mainstream audience is not going to be able to digest, as I think Mordheim shows really well. So the other important part was the city. Like one thing that we notice in Warhammer main game is that you put any terrain on the battlefield, it tends to ruin the game. Really, Warhammer 5th edition was best played on a completely flat plane, because there were devastating penalties for going through terrain of any kind, like and this was because it was based on historic war games. As you know, in Middle Ages, you had a little bit of a swamp or a forest. That was the end of your formation. You had to fight in the open. So I wanted to do the opposite. So the scenery, the rules, the special skills, the kind of warbands we did, it's all in support of a vertical gameplay, which I call. So you want to put your archers on upper floors so they can snipe further away enemies. You can do the diving charges. You can climb up almost any wall. The terrain is destroyed by a comet, so the houses are not these close blocks, because if there is one kind of terrain that's worst for wargaming, it's a closed house. So we wanted the city but we didn't want it to be full of closed boxes, which are impossible for gameplay. So that's why the meteorite wiping the city and sort of ripping all the buildings open and suddenly opening all that space for gameplay, it worked out really well. And again, that was not a sort of a calculated decision that came from the story of the twin-tailed comet hitting the city. So for the warbands, you notice that especially in the core rulebook, I was very, very, very stingy with the sort of a magical special abilities equipment. Like the warbands are quite even. There are a couple of standouts like the vampires, the ogres, and the possessed, but those also tend to cost a lot. And because this was 500 years before the current time of the Warhammer world, so the black powder weapons are expensive. You can only buy them from dwarves, really. Armor, because on the historical setting, only very few warriors had armor. It was super expensive, especially on this sort of if the Warhammer the timeline at that point was sort of a Renaissance. This was much closer to the Middle Ages. So the armor was super expensive. So it was meant to be a status symbol rather than something that you use that much in the game, apart from a shield here and there. The good side of that was that it makes the game much faster, because most people don't have armor saves, so you resolve the combats much faster than you do if you have to have always yet another layer of saves on top of everything else. So it actually, in some ways, it helped the feel. So very gritty, low magic, which then made the little bit of magic you've got that much more special. Because if everybody's a spellcaster and has a magic weapon and the good armor, then nobody's special, right? If you see somebody in Mordheim who has 3+ armor stave, you stand up and take notice, because that's very difficult to achieve. So I also look at our skirmish games at that point. I took a long, hard look at them. And there was a lot of stuff that actually I felt did not work. Like there is, of course, a lot of similarity to Necromunda, because the systems of the 40K and Warhammer also were very close. And remember, I had to be true to the Warhammer gameplay at that point. But Overwatch, I didn't do. I tried it in Mordheim. It made the games terrible, locked them down. The dice rolls every time you had to deal with somebody who's been the wounded. Instead of I did you knock down the miniature face down if it's the stunned, and you just turn them over as they sort of get up. And this was really inspired by the Little Wars, the very first miniature war games, like a public miniature war game system ever made. That it's as much tied to the miniatures rather than breaking the flow of the gameplay with dice rolls. Of course, the game is now 20 years old. If I did it again today, I would streamline it a lot more, because the miniature gaming space has changed. But on the flip side, I think it's good that Mordheim is what it is, because it's sort of it's a glimpse of history, and it being sort of quite archaic and old school, it also makes it different, because all the other miniature game systems right now are very streamlined, which I do love. But it's the sort of the echo from the past. It's the sort of of the game that's still very much alive and uses these rather old gameplay the systems like I go, you go. It's the dealing with individual models, them having quite the complex stat lines. It also makes it stand out from the crew. And then I also felt that our skirmish system at that point had a very, very slow post-battle sequences. So I put everything into the one. You grab a bunch of dice, you roll them, you apply your modifiers and your extra the dice rolls, and you have your exploration chart, and you get your the wordstone at the same time. So everything goes very quickly, and yet it feels like it's quite complex. Like as you progress in the game, you get more and more exploration dice and more modifiers on them and more heroes. So you kind of are pushing deeper and deeper into the city, and yet it all works on the same system, and it doesn't get massively convoluted. And of course, vertical gameplay at that point, skirmish games had very little of it. It's so A lot of the rules, the climbing, shooting from higher places, it's the diving charges, the visibility hiding rules, all were done. It's in order to really pay attention to verticality as opposed to the horizontal gameplay, which the big games at that point had. Um, and then the entire team really got into the spirit of just pushing inside jokes into the game. Like there are still tons of Easter eggs in the book that the fans have not found. They have found a lot, and there are lists on the websites and on the Facebook groups and on the Reddit and the Discord, but there is still a lot more. And of course, we had fish everywhere. It was the both an inside joke, but it's also because the theme of Mordheim is that it's perilous to your soul to go to Mordheim. And of course, in Christianity, they call, and this is not a religious statement, by the way, but we were inspired, like everybody can see that 40K was inspired by the Catholic religion. I mean, you look at the Primarchs and the disciples of Christ. It's not like Rick hit that everywhere. In here, the fish are the symbol of soul, and Jesus was known as the great fisherman of souls. So it's really the vying of the souls of everybody who goes to Mordheim. Doesn't just go into mortal peril, but also the mutational effects of the weird stone and the sort of the evil deeds you have to do in order to fight the other warbands. It's they also they endanger your immortal soul. So the fish are sort of the symbol of the people who went there and put their being in a risk. It's sort of a spiritual being in the risk. But I am kind of hoping that I can go to my grave with at least one of the Easter eggs still undiscovered by the fans. I like a little bit of mystery. So the playtesting, you can see a couple of pictures here. It's these are my friends. There is the Tube. It's who is a surgeon now. It's the big Warhammer player. It's we did a lot of the international playtesting. At that point in GW, nobody believed that internet would ever amount to anything. So I was the only one at the studio with Jervis Johnson who used it for anything. And it's actually a funny story that I almost got fired from GW by saying that the internet is the future, which of course made the sales and the mail order groups, like they got so angry that the head of sales went to my boss Rick and said, you need to fire him because he's speaking blasphemy, because we make our money by mail order and like speaking to everybody on phone. And of course, nowadays, GW does almost all of their business through online sales. But what do I know? But anyway, it was for me, it was good because before that, playtesting tended to happen almost exclusively within the GW studio, which of course you don't have that many people and not that many games are getting played. And I could multiply the amount of feedback and the playtesting this way, which of course paid big dividends in the Warhammer 6th edition, where the game balance was my main focus. So, but this was the first game that the used a playtest groups outside the design studio. And I don't think you can talk about Mordheim if you don't talk about the art of Mordheim. Now, this was the last hurrah of the artist and illustrator. So as soon as the John heard about this, he just said, "Okay, I'm dropping everything else. You guys sort out 40K. This is what I want to do." So when you look at the artwork of the rule book and all the paintings and associated artwork, that's John Blanche given free hand on a project. He wrote this huge Bible. It's what it looks like. He went through every page painstakingly. I still have a couple of his handmade paintings for this. Which are way more incredible in real life than they are. But remember that they are color pieces, and what you see in the Mordheim rulebook is mainly black and white because it was expensive to do color at that point. So not everything could be made in color. And this was the last time when we didn't do any processing of the art with computers. So this was the last time when everything was handmade. And even though we laid out the book on a computer, you'll notice that a lot of the lines of the text are wonky and some of the letters are just tiny bit offset, because we were there copying what it looked like when you still were laying out all the letters individually in the old-fashioned printing press. So, and I think it's the John's leadership, the decision to make everything handcrafted, and then the go that extra mile of the sort of making all the diagrams, everything hand drawn, making the text itself to look like it was laid out by hand. I think this is why the people come back to Mordheim art, and it's still called in the art department. If they want something that looks like Mordheim, they said it's Mordheim factor. And I don't think a book could be made like this anymore. Definitely not in a big studio, because I think the skill is mainly lost. Like the artists like that, the new generation isn't like that. And I am not looking down on modern fantasy art, because times change. It's everything is part of the on time period. But I don't think the skills to make a game book like Mordheim exist anymore. So I don't have to sort of probably explain to you guys. It's the why the art is so impactful, how all the text that with these full page pieces, how it's tied to the art you see to create the overall atmosphere. It's I think that there just isn't anything like it in anywhere in the gaming. Inspiration, a lot of you probably can see Dürer, Blake, you can see Hieronymus Bosch. You can even see Impressionists. It's these were some of the drawings that the John Blanche just plastered all over the design and art department when we were making Mordheim. And I think it shows. So we really wanted to get into a mindset of the medieval and the painters, is to whom, remember, science wasn't what it is today. So the whole world was full of the spiritual world, religious, the truths. It's the everything was interpreted through the lens of the numinous, rather than the technology and logic. And that was really why a lot of the Mordheim artwork, it's on surface level, it makes no sense, a lot of it. But on the flip side, on a sort of instinctual level, when you look at it, it makes you feel things inside, because it uses this very primal, very how would I say, symbolic is the art to convey the idea of Mordheim, rather than trying to make a technical illustration of the world. It's more sort of conveys the feeling. Production is also very, very interesting, because it is pretty amazing how long the Skaven and the human mercenaries sprues have been like the in service. Like they still, considering how old they are, they stood test of time. And these were the first multi-part plastic kits of the kind that GW ever made. And remember, at that point, the Perry twins had to make these 3 times their actual size and in a mirror when they were sculpting them. And then a machine, they scanned them into 3D and made the plastic sprues at the very, very unfortunately named KKK plastic. I have no clue why somebody would name their company. It's so we called it. Then we changed the name to Triple K, because for obvious reasons. But the other thing was that we put a lot of work into value for money. So the Mordheim box was only £40, which was easily the cheapest big box game we did at that point. And we did a lot of clever thinking. It's the buildings, only the corner pieces were plastic, so the rest would be cardboard, which allowed us to bring down the price. Because the idea really wasn't that the Mordheim would make obscene amounts of money, but rather it would bring players into the game of Warhammer. It's so I wanted it to be as affordable as possible. and we really tried to cram the box full of stuff. Um, so it's an interesting to follow the legacy. I think that because it was community first game from the beginning, it's always remained that way. So the Town Crier Fanatic compendiums, some of it was written by me or the GW designers, but most of it came from the fans. You look at something like Mordheim, you look at all these groups, the key guys like you running tournaments. It's just kept going without, like, because I could never produce the amount of stuff that you see out there. It's the even if somebody paid me, I couldn't do even scratch that surface. It's the Warhammer sort of being taken by the community and embraced by it, and it's sort of self is the replenishing now. Like there's what I call the virtuous cycle, that everybody does good for the community, so the community thrives and brings new people in. People are bringing their kids playing Mordheim now. It's the who are then inspired, and they really start doing their own content, because the book itself says is to go out and create stuff for this. And this was really like when I was a kid, 12 years old, and I got the red box of D&D first time, and it just was beyond amazing, mind-blowing experience. And I really, the words of Gary Gygax stuck with me, that this is just a starting point. Now you go and create these worlds and do your own rules, and don't come to us. Is the asking for us to give rules qualifications, is the you own it. And this was really what I wanted to do with Mordheim, why I also wasn't too worried about strict game balance here. Because quite frankly, you guys want to run a tournament and make armor cheaper or make the saves unmodified, I would have never had issue with that. That's exactly what I want people to do with Mordheim. It's to make the game their own. And of course, there's been a lot of games. It's both in the video games and in the tabletop that sort of have followed the footsteps. It's the Ruins City Fantasy Skirmish games, and there are actually quite a lot of them. Frostgrave is just the most well known. It's but it's really once it was out there, it just became one of the game genres that people play. And so it's always nice to see that you can inspire other people to be creative and do their own games. Is the best thing that you've done. It's crazy what people do. They take tattoos. I mean, they build boards that absolutely put everything that even the pros at the GW design studio did to shame. Like you look at that French Mordheim table, and there are hundreds of like these. And I think it's a dream of the lot of the wargamers, that one day they would have a splendid Mordheim board. Because I really think there is nothing like it in all of the tabletop gaming space. Nothing looks quite like a really well-crafted Mordheim table does, because every nook and cranny is a story. It promises a unique gameplay situation. It makes you want to bring your guys and start moving through the space. There is adventure there that I think that a lot of the more clean and clinical tabletop setups just lack. And the photo on the bottom left corner is from the Mordheim 20-year celebration. John Blanche came here to Finland. A lot of the top creators of in the tabletop gaming space came to celebrate it. It was great to meet John again. It's just amazing stuff. And I was just looking that after all these years, the very top painters, modelers, hobbyists are this inspired and do such an amazing stuff. I mean, it's humbling. It really is. I'm also there's been a lot of female gamers who've come to me and said that, look, this was the first tabletop game, because a lot of people, especially in the past, found 40K a bit off-putting. It's for women who love war games. But the Sisters of Sigmar, like there are entire groups dressing up as them. I mean, there's a lot of people also. It's the LARPing the other war bands in Mordheim, but this was the one that all these ladies. These are from Denmark. It's I love the ogre. It's the going around the battlefield with the blindfold. sort of could sort of find something to represent them and still feel that they've not been shoehorned in. Because the Sisters of Sigmar are integral part of the story of the Mordheim. I didn't add them as a oh, I'm gonna do something for girls. I was creating the story, and suddenly the group of the warrior nuns was before me, and I just put them into the story and into the game very organically. It wasn't my method of creation isn't that I make a plan trying to appeal to somebody, but rather to try to tell a great story. The Mordheim miniatures and tables, it's the keep racking prices, and especially I'm like amazed how often I know it's the wins, the miniature painting competitions around the world, considering how old model it is. It's just stunning to me. This is some of the stuff that was in the Mordheim 20-year celebration. Like you look at the quality and the creativity, it's just staggering. There was the if you look at the bottom middle, there was a Mordheim table that is a box that you open, and it becomes the Mordheim table that's all vertical inside a single box that you can then close and take everywhere. Just stuff that I couldn't have dreamed of is the making. And the people are still so inspired by it that they make stuff like this. So the end result is that the game is stronger than ever. I think more people honestly are playing it now than they've ever played it, including when it came out. The PC game is actually now over 800,000 copies sold, so it's a big hit. Mobile game is over 1 million downloads. Unfortunately, they have to wind it down because GW didn't give them license again. There are tens and tens of thousands of people online playing. Reddit, Facebook forums, YouTube, and local tournaments. Like I get so many people writing to me about hey, we're running tournament, this many players. We have all these prizes. It's the people are coming together. It's for a weekend, and it's busier than it was when I was at GW. It's and that just shows that in the end, the fans are more powerful than any company when it comes to keeping a game alive. And finally, it's these are some of the questions that the people asked me about the meteor. There actually came two the creatures with a comet. Obviously, Shadow Lord that I talk about. The other one being a child of light, the avatar of Sigmar. Again, it's the light and darkness. It's you can't have one without the other. So in the end, the sisters were right. It's about what was happening. It's the witch hunters, even though it's my own warband, were wrong in the story. It's so that's something that I get a lot of questions on. And I really think that the Shadow Lord, who eventually became Belacor in the GW lore, and then the Sisters of Sigmar, they represent like the yin and yang, the light and darkness of the Mordheim, which I think that light, because Mordheim is very dark and very grim, but light shines darkest when it's the brightest when it's really dark, and I think that's what the Sisters of Sigmar really represent in the game, and that juxtaposition. It's because makes like there has to be a little bit of hope even in the darkest story in order for you to find out how it ends. So I'll turn it up to you now. It's what do you want to know?
I think Wilton's got a question.
Yep.
Anyone?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yep.
How is it, after all these years, with how sort of with GWIP and how kind of close they like to keep a handle on it, how is it that Mordheim has been so free and open to everyone, especially online?
Well, I think part of it is that John Blanche is still the art director in GW. He's the overall. It's the studio art director, and I don't think he will let anybody else to do it. And they don't want to unleash him again. And I think also like because the fan base is so large and strong, I think they are a little bit, and these are obviously, I of course I still talk to my friends of GW, but I wouldn't dream of sort of putting them in professional jeopardy. But the feeling I get that they're a bit clueless. How could they approach the fan base? I mean, how could you have Mordheim without John's art? How do you change the rules, which are old school, and not upset and piss off everyone? How do you and it isn't really a very good game because it was designed to be cheap game. It's easy for you to put your warband together and pay very little money. You build the terrain yourself, you don't buy it. How do you make money with it? Because that wasn't the point of the game. It wasn't like the Rick wanted a gateway game to big Warhammer games. Is and Mordheim isn't money spinner. I mean, of course, compared to most miniature games out there, of course it made a lot of money, but in the GW terms, you simply don't buy that many miniatures, and what you buy you tend to convert and change rather than buy like boxes and boxes and boxes of miniatures. So I think it's it also doesn't really fit the current GW sort of how would I say, public persona. It's a bit too out there, bit too grim. I mean, heaven's sake, the game has drugs that you're encouraged to use. I don't know if GW would dare to put that out again. It's I got away with a lot of stuff that you couldn't get away, because remember, it's been 22 years. It's and GW is now much bigger, and they are therefore much more risk averse public image wise. And the Mordheim is punk rock, and when you are making pop songs, it's you don't put out punk music.
Right. What's your opinion of Cursed City, and do you think that reflects kind of a almost sanitized version of Mordheim?
Oh yeah. I mean, you look at the miniatures and you look at the sort of the name of the game. It's clear that they are sort of dipping their toe there. And remember, at the end of the day, the people who work at GW are not robots. It's a lot of them are Mordheim fans, and you can see that the people who worked on that. I mean, it's not like the influences are difficult to see. There is a bit of homage paying, which is, I mean, I do it all the time. It's only natural. We are inspired. I mean, all of us stand on the Mount Tolkien, right? If you are into fantasy, and even if you are not fan of Lord of the Rings, everybody knows that the fantasy, the genre is built upon the work he did, and that's a depth that I gracefully accept. It's just a reality. So being inspired by those who became before you and influences is part of the process. But you had a good word there, is the using word sanitized, because one of the things you look at, for example, the Witch Hunter models. We did not put the classic Witchfinder general look. We didn't do the hats and the cloaks, and the Witch Hunters are in the Mordheim are much more ragtag, and you sort of have to you have to figure out that these are Witch Hunters by the overall feeling of the warband, rather than us using the cheapest, simplest the symbols. Originally, I pitched that let's make them to have the classic hats and the cloaks, but John said no. It's let's do something that every warband should be unique. If they have uniform and everybody looks the same, and if we go for the lowest common denominator, nobody will remember it. And I think like the Witch Hunter models, as sort of their impact, they still have that punch, even though of course the level of detail today is much greater because of the technology. But the sort of the character that those models have is still unparalleled.
So I was wondering if you have like archived notes of lore for like the districts and I guess various other parts of Mordheim that are just tucked away in a box somewhere that have never been seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's a great answer. As someone that loves lore and that sort of thing, that just makes me happy to know that there's like more somewhere.
I mean, so I still have my notes on that campaign, and one day I do want to type them up to the community, but the thing that's to take them from the notes that I can barely read into something that you got to play and read and enjoy. That's real work. Like that would take me a couple of months. So I do want to actually share that eventually. Just we'll have to wait until there is a better situation in my life to do that.
Fair enough. Well, we're ready when you're ready.
Okay. Do you think with the old, like, I have two questions. One is, how do you feel about the old world coming back at Games Workshop? And then do you think they're going to somehow, because they've withdrawn the licensing for the video games, do you think they'll make a kind of basically Mordheim again and sell terrain kits and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, them bringing up the taking back the licenses almost always means that they are planning something of their own. Either they made a partnership with some other company to make that game exclusively, which is, or them doing the game themselves. Now, I have nothing against Age of Sigmar, but I love classic fantasy. I find it a little bit sterile. I find it the lore very thin. I don't have the old world being so rooted in our world has so much stronger bones to me. Like I can believe in that world, and it was thought of so much deeper by Brian Ansell and Rick that I'm just happy that the hobbyists are gonna get new high quality models. So I see in that way that's a good thing. I don't think, like, you look at how strong 6th edition, for example, is. Like that's another the classic era Warhammer game that's played so much. Like I'm again just stunned. I think it's now so rooted in the community that you can't put the genie back in the bottle. So I think if it's a new generation people play, that's good. And if it's for the guys who play the classic Warhammer games, they get new set of high quality models, hopefully with somewhat reasonable prices. It's I see it as a win-win.
Do you have a favorite skill or like spell in the game? Just in general, like one that stands out that you just love that ability?
Oh, it's the one in this is more flavor, but I love the necromancy skill that if you kill a hero, what's its name? It's the not reanimation, it's the awaken. Yeah, cause that you get to take your opponent's model and put it in your own army and rub it in their face every time they take it. It's I think that was the one of the better ideas I had. It's the there are some spells that really it's I wish I would have made clearer, but that one I just, it's so Mordheim, right? That you get to face your old friends as undead. It's I love it. And if you manage to do it to a powerful hero, it's actually a game-changing spell.
From a terrain making perspective, is when I'm building terrain, I'm thinking about how a building would naturally collapse or what might have happened to make it look the way it does. And one thing that I keep coming up with is that buildings are ruined, but they're not burned. Did you ever think about fire in the context of the ruined city? Because, you know, obviously in a medieval city, it's a big risk of fire, that everything's timbered. I'm just wondering if that ever came up in the process.
Yeah, I mean, the idea was really that the surroundings of the pit where the meteorite hit, that would be pretty much like burned to ground. And then the rest of the parts, like the shards would hit them, they would be more like hand grenades than incendiary. And they would just blast holes and make the walls collapse. It's also in the Warhammer world, the cities, because we wanted Gothic architecture, like all the buildings are goddamn huge. It's most of the buildings had at least some stone in them, and a lot of buildings were full stone. So that sort of kind of meant that there was a less effect of the fire, because that tended to just wipe out the cities. Like the oldest city in Finland, Turku, when it burned down, that was it. Like there was nothing left. And of course, that's not very big.
Cable. It's just all black.
Yeah. So There is also some scenarios that's been written where the fire plays a big part. I like those. But in general, we went with a, how would I say it nicely? It's the stretching the believability, because the really having a tall buildings where the upper floors are somehow still standing gives you more gameplay opportunities, opposed to, but buildings tend to, when they collapse, they just tend to collapse. It's the but there is of course a Mordheim is at its best when there is the lot of verticality to the gameplay. It's so I think that's a trade-off that I'm willing to take.
Is there a warband that you are most proud of after creating it, and or your all-time favorite?
I mean, it's Witch Hunters for sure. It's I love the sort of the feel of it. I love that the like how I played it at the studio. I actually picked academic skills to everyone, because it's the only warband where all the heroes can take academic skills. So I just drove all the prices down. So all the equipment is super cheap, because remember, in Mordheim, arguably equipment is more powerful than the models. So in the end, like my witch hunters were armed and equipped so well that even though my opponents had much more powerful models individually, well, when everybody has dueling pistols and the ropes for climbing and they have combat drugs and poison, it's then the opponent is screwed. It's the equipment is much more powerful. It's just most people can't afford it. So I managed to play it quite differently from the mercenaries, because a lot of people look at the witch hunters and they think they are just mercenaries with a little bit of flavor. But if you look at the strengths and weaknesses of the warbands and their skills, it's actually on purpose. It has quite a potentially quite different track. So I went with the academic domination of the campaign. Very successful. I mean, everybody complains to me about the witch hunters, and then I say, "What do you mean? They always, when I get the tournament results, they always win. If they are the weakest warband, why the bloody hell do they always win all the competitive games?" And I had to be a bit careful, because everybody knew it was my warband. So, like when I put the model limit to it, because there are ways to overcome the model limit in Mordheim, right? The Halfling Cooks, the Halfling Cookbook. But I had to sort of make sure that the studio didn't grumble that I just made my own warband more powerful. A lot of warband shaming was going on at that point.
So, do you, like Gregory, play Mordheim at the time?
Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of leagues. There is a yearly league here in Finland, Helsinki. I do pickup games all the time, and right now I've decided that I am going to remake my original warband with modern models, because quite frankly, the original metal ones, I can't afford. They are now so expensive, which is ironic, because I tried to make a game that's super cheap to play. Yeah, it's but collectors are crazy people. So I want to remake that original warband as well as I can remember it. Maybe I can find the the paper I had. I had a flagellant hero who was mounted and had academic skills. It's because you get to pick the two skill sets when you make a new hero. It's and it was like he was the menace. Because obviously you're flagellant, you pass all your leadership tests, you got a horse, so you're super fast, and he was very powerful, like 2 wounds, 2 attacks with flail. It's the toughness 4. It's if you had like somebody on the foot, it's he would just ride them down. Because the horses in general in Mordheim are crap, because who brings a horse into a urban skirmish? But if the opponent had a powerful melee fighter, then they couldn't come to ground, because my flagellant would hunt them down. And because he had academic skills, I gave him glasses, because he was very learned flagellant. Oh, Rick hated that model. It's because it was a menace to his warband. It's but this is the thing with the Mordheim. It's every warband I think should tell a story, like and your losses too. And the Mordheim is so unforgiving game compared to the modern games where like losing anything permanently, people are very averse to that. But in Mordheim, then if you succeed, you feel you earned it. Like you played really well, you were lucky. Your characters survived. It didn't come easy or cheap. And I think there is something there that, I mean, I've lost like all my heroes in the first game. I played in a lot of campaigns, and you just get wiped out and you feel terrible. But it makes the victory so much sweeter. Or I had my dwarf, the troll slayer. It's doing a diving charge on vampire. They have initiative 2, so I had to roll 1 on the diving charge, and he succeeded and made diving charge and killed the vampire who was escaping with the weird stone, which of course was terrible for my opponent. And like it's still, hey, it was a 1 chance out of 6. It could happen. So so these kind of things that the harshness of the game makes the successes, the heights feel higher because the lows are very low.
I am Alessandro, and at Dark Ages Workshop on Instagram and Facebook. And I have like a little question or an Easter egg, if we can call it like that.
Yep.
I was doing some research, and I've seen, the German people there in Houston will recognize the city. There is a city in Germany which is called Nordlingen, which was struck by a meteor 15 million ago. And watching the city from the top, it also it recalls the shape of the Mordheim map. Was it an actual influence?
It was an influence, like we read about it. We didn't remember that we didn't have Google back then. So and there was like a 100,000th of the amount of photo reference. So literally, yes, it's because we went through history books. Visually, most of the stuff you see actually comes from the Nottingham, where the Games Workshop, the design studio is located.
Yeah.
The building that come with the box or are in the art, a lot of them are just taken from the medieval streets of the Nottingham. The castle of Nottingham is on the top of the rock. It's called the Rock. That's where the idea for this monastery comes from. But yes, but not visually. It's the one thing. It's good to remember that everything about the Warhammer and 40K is fundamentally English. Like even the way that the Empire are Germans, yeah, but they are Germans as English who've never been to Germany imagine them to be. Everything, the Italians are Italians through the English lens. It's the dwarves. Everybody thinks they are Scottish. They are not. They speak Yorkshire accent English. It's the Warhammer quintessentially discussion of English between themselves on how they view the world. And I think that's sort of charming and unique, and that's why it doesn't cost. Everybody else just does the same fantasy. It's while it's quintessentially in good and for ill British. It's the high elves talk in the posh English. The orcs speak Cockney. It's that's English. It's the everything about is about England. So even Mordheim, we went around the city streets of Nottingham and the looked at the buildings and took photos and used those. So everything in all the classic Warhammer products has its roots in
in England.
Yes, because like I said, it's what I love about Warhammer. It's the one game where the Germans get to be heroes because of the history. They are always the bad guys, but in Warhammer they are the heroes. But again, they are not. never any German involved in making the game. It's they are how the English imagine Germans are. That's why the people of the empire are so goddamn taciturn and serious and efficient and sort of the industrial minded. It's the which of course Germany isn't a monolith. No nation is, but you need to create an effective game where every faction has flavor and a good feel to it. You need that how would I say crystallization of the core ideas of a culture. Dark elves are how the English see the Americans.
Wow.
Take it that as a compliment, because remember one thing with Warhammer is that we took piss on everything, including most of all the English. It's it's the irreverence is important, because like I said, if we went po-faced serious with everything in Warhammer, the game would be too gray and sort of so depressing. There has to be like the orcs are both brutal and funny. The chaos is both like depressingly overwhelming, but it still has like the funny, the Nurgle silliness and the sort of the naughtiness of the Slanesh. I think it's important not to be too po-faced. It's even when you're dealing with serious subjects, it's I think humor is part of the human experience. I don't think being like depressed, unless you're trying to do something like what George Orwell was trying to do with 1984 as a warning on how not to live your life. I think that humor is important part of the any experience and hope. While the Orwell specifically said, if we go down this path of totalitarianism, then there is no hope and no humor, and that's why his books are so. I love 1984, but it's such a hard read. I can only do it once a decade because it's so harsh and grim, and everything ends so badly. And the worst of it is that it's believable that we really could go down that path. So I think that for the gaming, Warhammer is also enjoyable pastime. So there has to be a chance to laugh as well. And I think that's and the British do have like a lot of my favorite comedians have always, and the writers have always been British. And you look at Shakespeare, he wrote, great dramas, but also great comedies. And I think that's the sort of embracing the entire life experience. I think good game needs to do that. There is also like even in Mordheim, which is arguably the darkest game that GW did, there is like a ton of funny stuff in it. Like there is the adventures of the Sir Cockroach. It's it's the Sir Frog who is the traveling from page to page and finally gets eaten. It's all the people fighting with fish, which of course is a reference to Monty Python. The fish lapping dance is the great classic sketch. You need that lightening of the mood. It's and I think it's in order to embrace the entire creativity of the people who are making art or miniature conversions for the game. If we close off the funny stuff completely, then I think the game is poorer because of it. You can do a full-on balls-to-wall grimdark warband for Mordheim, or you can do a very silly fish-themed band and everything in between. And I think that's a strength, not weakness. Okay, ask a written question. Maybe somebody can read it out to me once it's written. So please, it's I'll be happy to answer.
All right. As I do not have functioning camera at the moment, I'd like to ask a question in written form. Whatever happened to the huge amount of warpstone collected by the Sisters of Sigmar, and why did never ever anyone attack the rock to secure that warpstone? I mean, they hoard a fortune. Someone has to know about it. It would mean that all the Sisters of Sigmar are uncorruptible to the core.
Yeah. So I actually thought about that when I made it. So the part of it is that the rock is, it all intents and purposes, unassailable. It's it is practically, like, as those who've studied Middle Ages know, that very, very, very few castles fell to a assault. Like, castles are a bitch. They are, especially if they are, imagine like very high rock in the middle of a vast river with single bridge that the sisters have a drawbridge for, with an entire the military order defending it, incredibly well stocked with its own gardens and a well. That is the one uncorrupted place where you actually can have agriculture. So it's almost impossible to lay siege to it. And then the Vault of Sigmar, where the Weirdstone was taken, it's basically guarded by the power of Sigmar. So even once the sisters were forced to leave the city, well, you have to deal with Sigmar Heldenhammer if you're gonna break into the vault, and that's just there just wasn't in my mind a power that could overcome his power at the heart of the empire. So a lot of the other, like all the Weirdstone pieces, most of them had a story, like the Great Skaven Wars were enabled by the Weirdstone that the clan Eshin found. And of course, the most famously, Vlad von Carsten collected so much Weirdstone from the Mordheim that powered the Great Spell of Doom, which allowed him to raise all the dead from between the mountains and Stirland and the course of Vampire Wars. So there was a lot of influence that the Weirdstone of Mordheim had. So maybe in a hindsight, it's that the sisters saved the Warhammer world from a great calamity because they collected so much of the Weirdstone away, so that the powerful entity could not got their hands to it. But they are supposed to, like I said, they are supposed to represent the hope and the sort of the light. So them achieving something out of the tragedy, I think, was important. So as far as I'm concerned, nobody ever, that the vault is still there. And if you go and try to pick up any of the Weirdstone, the avatar of Sigmar will come and hit you on the head with a hammer. And that's not going to go well for anybody, except for them. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's a good question. And this is the kind of stuff that you see that this kind of stuff, I spend a lot of time talking to the design team, and especially Rick, that you want a fantasy world, it has to have some internal consistency. If you just pull stuff out of your ass, then nobody can get immersed in it. Like the Tolkien's strength was that he spent all his life, incredible amount of effort, making sure that the timelines, the family trees, the migrations of the people internally in that world made sense, so that people can imagine the Middle Earth. Because again, like I said, if there is a weakness that I feel is in a lot of modern fantasy and at least the original release of the AOS, it's kind of hard to, if everything feels that it's pulled out of your ass, it breaks the immersion and the suspension of disbelief to me. I can accept a lot. I love sci-fi and fantasy, but at least I hate when something that wasn't possible 5 minutes ago is now possible, or we're gonna march our army or take it over the sea. It's and then you have no ships, or we are gonna travel 10,000 miles and it takes a day, and you just go, it's no. I mean, you are kidding me. Like, this is clearly convenience to the writer rather than working within the world that's being created. And I think the old world, with its distances and economy and the cultures and trade and the history, it's much easier to be absorbed in it because you're not being punched in the face all the time with lore that you just go, oh, come on, this is clearly wank. Like I have to say, like the J.J. Abrams' mysteries box style writing, that because he believes, and he's a very accomplished guy in many ways, but his writing where he starts with the mystery, with the intent of never actually having no idea what it is, and then building a story. His movies and TV series always end up in a corner, because when you had the world had nobody's put any thought on it wasn't built from ground up. It started with the mystery. It didn't start with the end or beginning. It just, here's a mystery, let's build a world around it. you can't build a consistent world around it, and then you end up with the like what we saw in the Rise of the Skywalker. That okay, so Emperor Palpatine is back. What? I mean, he got thrown in the fucking reactor of the Death Star, which exploded. And this was the whole point of the story. This is how Darth Vader was redeemed, and Luke became the boy that saved the galaxy. You can't bring him back. This makes no sense. And the only way you're gonna do this is some totally convoluted bullshit that nobody is gonna believe. And that's why you just go, oh come on, I can't believe anything in this movie because that's such clearly it's just the contrived convenience because you set yourself up in a situation where you actually don't have a baddie anymore. But that's just an example. But you can see that it's very hard to build a world that you engage with for, like you guys have done with Warhammer World. Probably most of you have done it at least for 10 years, maybe probably more. It's if the world is all the time telling you that no, nobody thought about any of this, it's just random shit. So we could figure that out. And of course there are mistakes. But the one thing that is actually quite interesting is that all the stories, the lore you read in Warhammer is written by unreliable narrators. Like you look at, for example, the background I wrote for the 6th edition Dark Elf book. It's all lies. It's I invented this character. It's who wrote the history from the point of view of Dark Elves, which you read it next to the history that's presented in the High Elf book. It's all like hideously twisted. But of course, you have to realize that the High Elf historian is also unreliable narrator. They are telling the history from their point of view, just like real history. Like real historians don't take ancient historians at the face value. They study the archaeology, and they figure out, because there was politics and ideology involved in the past too. So, and that makes actually Warhammer World again more believable, that the history isn't monolith, because it's history. It is the how does each faction or race or nation remember it. And they all have, like the Bretonians, their history, how they recorded is that we are these pure Grail Knights and everything is beautiful and great. And the rest of the Warhammer world was, yeah, but what about Mussilian? There's a goddamn fucking undead running all over the place. Are you quite that pure as you think you are? So but that doesn't stop. The Bretonian player can believe their history and the Dark Elf player believe theirs. And that's a strength. But again, even then, you must have, like the red thread, you must have an idea of, on a high level, how does the history lie out? Because if you just pull stuff out of your ass again and again and again, it's a house of cards that collapses. And a lot of people don't mind that. But if you want to build up a hobby and a lore that lasts for a long time, I think you need to do that. I do not think for that reason that the Rise of Skywalker will be remembered as a classic sci-fi movie like the original trilogy. Because whatever weaknesses George Lucas had, at least he had an idea of the world he was creating and the story, how the beats happened. But well, that's my view. I mean, I obviously have my own biases too. Maybe it will be a classic. I hope not. Because then other writers will write like that, and I have to suffer through more convoluted rubbish. Yeah.
Is there any particular influence that Mordheim has had that you've seen out in the world that's giving you particular enjoyment?
Well, when Rogue Factor was making the video game and they contacted me and they asked advice, and seeing like how into it they were, that's a very good feeling that you see these highly professional people. It's the working on something and being really enthusiastic that you could do something that makes their life when they go to work looking forward to every day, that they get to work on something they enjoy. That's very good. The YouTube, like the amount of Mordheim videos and the fake trailers for the Mordheim movies that people make, like all these creators and a lot of like these big name creators, they ask me for interviews. That's because they are, I mean, I'm of course compared to them, I'm old. So it's nice to get a feeling that maybe something you made in some form is the will continue. It's the afterwards. It's the maybe that doesn't happen. Who knows? But there is at least a promise that you made some lasting impact. Or even if the game doesn't survive, creators were influenced by Mordheim, who then influence other creators. So it sort of comes part of the fabric of the. Because my lifelong passion is fantasy and science fiction, and being able to contribute to that in hopefully positive way, and that there is a future there. Somebody could trace the line to Mordheim is the people being inspired. That's a good feeling. Product is product, but a culture is alive in people. So there are like almost all games are dead games that have nobody plays them, or there is just a couple of people somewhere in Germany. It's always Germany. They just insane when they get into something. It's there has to be something in Mordheim for it to have like groups of tens of thousands of people is the posting every day and making videos and the playing tournaments. And there is no like, course, if I could do that with every game I make, I would do it. But of course, creativity doesn't work that way. I don't think, despite what a lot of game companies believe, that creativity can come out of an Excel sheet. Now, great business can come out of an Excel sheet. And of course, games companies, and I work for a dozen of them. It's they have to pay attention to the bottom line. But I'd like to think that now and then you capture lightning in the bottle. And I'm not talking about the sale. I made games for EA. I worked on FIFA, Need for Speed, and those games have made billions, not millions, billions. But I still think that as far as sort of, because they are entertainment you consume rather than a hobby like Mordheim is. I think that the sometimes you catch that lightning in a bottle and you make something, if you're lucky as a creator, that has a lasting impact. It's just like with Gary Gygax did with D&D, it's with how Rick did with Warhammer and especially 40K. It's you can't plan it. It's but there was an interesting story that's really inspired me. Like Akira Kurosawa, in many ways, it's one of the greatest movie directors of all the time. Like Seven Samurai is still the purest the action adventure film ever made, and of course, all the rest of the action adventure games are based on it because it set up every single the archetype for that. Like all the action adventure games you see are homage to it. Now he was dying. He was very old, and he was dying, and and he was then in his hospital bed 3 days before his death. He is working on a script, and then his doctor. This is all recorded in his biography. His doctor comes to him, why are you like you're barely hanging on? You should rest so you can spend time with your family. Why are you working still? Like we told you that you have a week to live. And he just looked and said, there is a chance I might create something good.
Wow.
And I think that's I'm not saying that people should work on their deathbed, but I think that he had that creative drive and passion. It's because he had already, like, of course, he's made so many of the most successful films ever. Most certainly having less than 7 days to live, he didn't need any more money. He was not going to see his film done. But there was still a chance that there is an idea, somebody would read it, it would spark something great would come out of it. And I think you need that, the spark. You need to want that before money if you want to make something that has at least chance of sort of be inspiring to other people. Again, I'm not saying, by no means I'm saying that people making games should run their companies to ground and take idiotic risks. But you should at least attempt to, whenever you make a game or a creative product, it's give it a chance to have something in it that is not just a carbon copy or a clone of something else. Sometimes you have to do those things as well, and sometimes you don't have. I mean, I was super lucky I had Gav writing my stories. You remember the story of Marius in the Mordheim. I had John Blanche as my art director, and you look at my art team. Carl Kopinski, my God, what an artist! It's the John Wayne England is the who sadly passed away, but still did the other stuff. It's the John Wigley. It's the Paul Smith. It's his last game for Games Workshop. I was so lucky. Rick helping me along is as the original creator of the Warhammer. Jervis and Andy. It's the sort of sounding of Alessio helping me with the rules. It isn't like it would be sheer arrogance to say that it was down to me. I was lucky. I had the perfect storm of probably the best team, and I know this is arrogant to say, but probably the best team that anybody ever had at Games Workshop. And that's luck. And sometimes you need luck. Just like in Mordheim, sometimes you need luck. You want to win, you have to take the risk, and roll the dice. That's an unusual choice because the Cult of Possessed it's the late bloomer warband. It's a hard choice for a tournament because it's the only warband where you can have unlimited power. Because if you save enough money and you hire a new Possessed, remember I put no limit on the amount of mutations you can pile on one character. It's the only open-ended character in the entire game. Like if you have the money, you can make a Possessed with unlimited power. 10 extra arms. For the mercenaries, they are super popular. It's funny, like the most vanilla and basic warband. There is so much like options on the table. And you can make out of such a simple. I mean, what I like about the mercenaries is that without any special rules or very, very like weird and fantastical units, you can still have as much variety and flavor as you ever wanted, which was what I wanted for Mordheim. It's today you would get GW making a warbands having least as very expensive big centerpiece models, which I totally understand from the business point of view. But the fact that just by varying the equipment and the makeup of your force a little bit and which province they come from, they can play totally differently. With Witch Hunters, my secret for winning the studio tournament was just as many dogs all the time as possible because they're so cheap. And in the beginning, because they are super cheap for the value of money, they don't gain experience, but they will let you win the early battles. And then I always just take the haggle skills, so I get my equipment buying cost to as low as possible. And then just basically I have so much more money than anybody else. That's my recipe. It's how I won my tournament. But of course, it's Mordheim. Sometimes you are unlucky.
Yeah, all my guys died so early that I was having to just frantically scrape my money together to buy my guys back. I even I had light armor on guys, and I was like selling armor off some dudes to just buy other dudes.
I didn't think again. It's I think that is just like the Mordheim is sometimes like it's like miserable. It's the clawing and falling further down, and that is part of the game. It's yeah, and I think that because Mordheim was not designed as a tournament game, it's a lot of people play tournaments and enjoy them a lot. But it was fundamentally made like in a normal campaign. You would scratch your warband and use the system of the XP bonus to catch up. It's so tournament. It's not. I mean, it's not optimized for tournament play. But on the other hand, there is a honor of the in persistence. I think. And undead, I always find a fascinating. It's like you have the central model, the vampire, who is arguably the toughest model in the entire game, and then you have a bunch of utter crap. It's somehow has to. I mean, you can eventually get the ghouls to be somewhat good and the dregs somewhat useful, and the dire wolves. It's but the zombies and dire wolves don't generate XP, so it's a warband where it lives and dies with your vampire. But then that's the flavor. I mean, and that's literally how that warband would be like. And the vampires are not easy to kill.
Not so far.
Pick it up. I have my last thing I'd like to say is that I'd imagine that for you coming into this tournament is you are pretty well established hobbyists and most likely are part of a gaming clubs or groups. It's usually people who come to tournaments are quite along the long haul hobbyists. So one thing I'd like to say is that there are a lot of people who would like to play miniature games, especially games like Mordheim that is quite easy to get into, that doesn't require tons of money and is very sort of, you can personalize it, and don't have the courage, or feel that they wouldn't be welcome. It's the reach out to people, especially the young ones. It's the people like you don't see that often playing war games like women. It's and stuff like you look at today's model range, like it's very hard now to find models with square bases, or the original models are obviously almost impossible to come by. It's my rule for, especially for new players, but really anybody, is that when it comes to the base sizes and rules strictness and everything else, be strict with yourself and very lenient with others. I think if you play like that, that's usually how everybody has the best time. So I would sort of encourage you that the reach out. There are more people who want to play and be part of the hobby, but find it intimidating to approach. It's you guys are Rick Priestley used to on purpose draw something that unfortunately looks very much like a breast, like it had the nipple and then the surrounding area and then a big circle. And he said that the middle here is where the long-term hobbyists lives, and they are like the magnets, and they bring other enthusiasts who then bring like a more casual gamers who are always the largest group. But it's the center that's the super important one, and the more sort of a open the center is, the stronger the hobby is, and the more alive it is, and the more vitality there is. So you are, and I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass, but people like you are kind of special in this hobby, that those people who are really like into it. And the way to keep our hobbies flourishing and alive, because you need people, is that you sort of I hate to use the word, but it's pretty good to evangelize is and are welcoming. It's because if we want to have this hobby in the future, it's the kind of the legwork is that our doors are open. So that's maybe my sort of a final advice to you as the players. It's there is probably a lot of kids or whatnot who would really like to take part, but they see big bearded man. And they are really intimidated to approach them. It's well, in reality, I mean, I found especially Mordheim, many other communities, but especially Mordheim communities, fantastically like non-toxic, welcoming, supportive, sharing. It's so let's keep that going.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good words.
Awesome.
Good words. Yeah.
Awesome.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, and good luck. And I look forward to seeing who wins the tournament. It's enjoy it, and may dice roll in your. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.